welcome to Inquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. And I've got a very interesting pen for resurrection today. And this is in an original Parker 51 case because it is a Parker 51 Vacumatic Pen and Pencil set from 1948. I picked this up in an antique shop several weeks ago and have just now gotten around to restoring it. Here's a video of that unboxing I did when I bought the pen. I found this and I said, I'm taking that right away. This is an original Parker 51 pen and pencil set. This is a Vacumatic in the original case. There's the pencil, still works, and here's the pen. Pardon the noise, people are cleaning my windows right now. Parker 51 with a gold-filled cap with these lovely vertical stripes, dove gray, Vacumatic. Let's see whether we can date this pen or just take it out for a coffee. Now let's take a look at this pen and pencil set and see what we have to do to bring it back to life. Set the box aside and take a look at the pen and pencil. They are gold cap and dove gray pen and pencils, and I've looked at the imprints on the Vacumatic pen and it has an 8 on it. It's very faint, but it's an 8, so it's a 1948 Parker Vacumatic, the last year that they made the Vacumatics before they changed to the Aerometric style. I appreciate the Vacumatics more than the Aerometrics. I think it was a step backwards in design when they went to the Aerometric, even though the Aerometric has a lot going for it in terms of longevity. I like the way the Vacumatic fills better than the Aerometric. They are in excellent shape, both of them. Both caps are slightly tarnished and have a lot of wear on them. One slight ding, but both finials are in really good shape. The bodies are in really good shape. You can see that the color is slightly different between the two. You might not be able to see it on camera, not sure, but the color of the barrel here and the blind cap seem to match, but the barrel of the Vacumatic is slightly darker. Interesting. These were made in Canada, and let's take a look. Top finial jewel, good shape, beautiful Parker feathered arrow, the pin striping, and the cap band says Parker on the front, and 1/10 14K gold filled, made in Canada on the back of the cap. You might be able to see that. And the cap slips off, and we see the hooded section. There's a slight amount of buckling here, slight amount of a wow. The plastic on these tends to warp over the years, but it's not perceptible by the eye. It is slightly by the feel. No major scratches, and the barrel has very little scratching, lots of wear. So a little bit of micro mesh is going to bring this back into showroom condition again. Let's take off the blind cap, and we see the pump. It has a bit of a spring to it. Not sure whether that means that there's a sack in there. Probably not, but we'll try to get that vac pump out of there, and we'll try to get this section off. But overall in very good shape, and that's why I paid quite a bit of money for this. But as soon as I saw it in the original case, I just snapped it up, had to have it. Let's look at the pencil for a moment. Same amount of wear, no dents that I can see in the pencil. Probably didn't get as much use. And there's the ribbed grip section of the pencil and the gold-plated nose cone of the pencil. Yeah, I can't get it apart with my hands. I have to use a gripper. This comes off. Oh, it came right off. Okay, so we're going to have to do some work on that. It looks, yep, that feels and looks broken. It's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to come out from here, like that. So I'll have to take a look at that to see what's going on. Is it working or not? No, it's crunching. It's got the eraser still in it, and these didn't store the leads down here, but there were leads stored in there. These, you push the lead in through the front. So maybe someone broke it trying to fix it. Someone scratched on the metal sleeve 3940 into that. Well, that's interesting. Wonder why they would do that. It's the best eraser that I've seen on one of these. Let's take a look at the nib first before I try to take the section off. And it looks like a medium to me. Good amount of tipping material there, and it looks to be in good shape. On the camera, let me look at it in my loop. Yeah, that's definitely a medium, if not a broad. And there's engraving on the ebonite feed that says 3, 1, 3, 7. Let's look at that pencil again. Broken pencil. What does it say? 3, 9, 4, 0. So this might not be someone working on it. This might be the Parker factory in Toronto working on this pencil and pen and scratching numbering system into the parts. 3137 right there. Okay, now the next thing is to heat this up and get that hood off of there. So I'm going to put it in my heating machine and let it sit for a few minutes and then try to get it off. Okay, I've heated up the section, put my gripper material on it, both the barrel and the section. It's coming loose. There we go. Okay, lots of old ink in the collector. Nib looks pretty good. Let's see if we can get the collector out. Yep, it's coming out. Lots of old dried ink. There's the breather tube. First thing I'm going to do is soak this a bit in my ultrasonic machine with some pen flush, which is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. Let it sit for a few minutes and get all that extraneous ink off of there, and then I should be able to extract that nib a lot easier. And that was literally a minute in the ultrasonic, and that's the difference right there. Look at that. Amazing. Even the gold polished up without even touching it. I'm going to grab some gripper material again and wrap it around the nib and hold on to the collector and push my knuckles together and pull. There we go. I pulled the nib right out. There it is. And let's see what we can see now. Again, you'll be able to see this on camera better than me. I think it says Parker, Canada, 1948. And on this side, it says 14K. Yep, just confirmed with my loop. 14 karat gold nib, ebonite feed with that number scratched into it, 31, 37, I think. And let's see if we can extract the feed and the breather tube. Yep, there we go. And extract the breather tube from the feed. Yep, there we go. So these pieces will all go back in the bath again and sit for a couple of minutes on vibrate. Makes them all really happy.
She came home last night and vibrated for an hour.
And while those are soaking, take the ring, the clutch ring off of the barrel, take the blind cap off, and I'll put this in the ultrasonic bath as well. And then we'll heat that up and get that pump out of there. So I've looked inside this barrel with my inspection camera, and here's the video I shot. You can see that there's a working diaphragm in there. So there's no need to replace it unless I find that there's a break in it or it isn't sucking up ink. So I think what we'll do is just clean the rest of this pen up. I've already taken the collector out of the ultrasonic bath and it is looking very clean indeed. Same with the feed, indeed. And that nib is very clean. I'm going to polish it up with my polish cloth, but the breather tube could stand some cleaning. That's why I always keep a guitar string around to do that. Last week, I fixed a pen with a guitar pick. My advice to you folks that want to start restoring pen, play the guitar. And the guitar string goes right through that breather tube and make sure that there's no gunked up, caked up ink inside. Do it from both ends, make sure it's clean. Then I'll soak that a little bit more. They tend to get pretty stained with ink, but they're in an amber color to begin with. So that's the color of it to begin with. That's the color after stained with ink. So I'm going to let that soak for a little bit more, but it is clear of any obstructions. I'll get out my polishing cloth, and I always like to pull off the bud from one of these cotton swabs that I've used. Pull off the bulk of that cotton, and then that cotton swab fits right inside that nib and gives me a little bit of purchase on it to be able to push down and polish. So that black mark I'm making is not dirt, it's gold. And there it is. Beautiful. just like new. I'm going to polish the underside of that ebonite feed to make it shine a little bit. Probably won't get rid of that serial number. I'm going to use a little bit of polishing compound and always support it. It's very thin, so I'm supporting it with my finger. Make sure it doesn't snap off. There we go. It's really nice and shiny now. And that's just the part that's visible right there. So that'll go back in the bath, get all that polished compound off there. And while those parts are soaking in the ultrasonic bath, I'm going to see what I can do about polishing up this cap. I'm going to use some of my metal polish on it first, and then we'll use a jeweler's cloth on it. Give it a nice bath and see what we can do with a cotton swab. And this is gold filled, so it's fairly sturdy. So it comes up nice and bright. There's the side I rubbed. There's the side I didn't. Try my jeweler's cloth on this. And there it is in all its glittering glory. I used the metal polish, then the ultrasonic bath to get all that polish off, and then polished it again with my jeweler's cloth vigorously. That's the nice thing about gold filled, is that it's really deeply gold, so it's more difficult to get through that finish into the brass or copper or whatever is the substrate of this metal. I think it's probably brass, but look at that, it's just gorgeous. So I'm going to do that. Let's compare it to the cap on the pencil, because they were both about the same. You can see that the pencil is fairly dull by comparison. I put the breather tube back in the ebonite feed and made sure that airway to that hole is clear. Blowing some compressed air through there really cleans it out. And then we can put our nib back on the feed and line it up just right there. Hold on to that, and we put the slit to the wide section, not the narrow. There's a narrow slit down the one side of the collector right there, and a wide slit. I line up the slit of the nib with that wide slit and press it in as far as it will go. Then we can put this back in the barrel, and we have to do the lineup routine for getting that hooded section on so it lines up with the nib properly. So we do it by hit and miss. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit of silicone grease right there, a little silicone oil, just to lubricate it, to make it turn easier. Just a little dab will do you. We don't want to get any on the collector at all, as it inhibits ink flow. So that slides on there really nicely now. And we can see I'm off by about 15-20 degrees, something like that. So I keep my thumb pointing along towards the front of that nib, and then I turn it just slightly and try again, and almost perfect. Just got to come back a smidge. That's technical. A smidge is half a mite, and there we go. The smidge was perfect. So now what we need to do is see whether this will draw up ink and how much ink it will draw up. So I'm going to get out my handy dandy digital scale, turn it on, and the body of the pen weighs 10 grams. Press tear, grab some water mints, immerse it in the ink, check for bubbles, pump 3 or 4 times. I see bubbles, so that's good. As long as I'm still seeing bubbles, I'm going to pump. Wonder if it means it's not filling. Let's find out, shall we? 0.33. It's not a lot. So I'm thinking that maybe I have to take that apart anyway and replace that diaphragm, because it's not very efficient at all. I should be getting a lot of ink in there, not just 0.3 milliliters. But while I've got some ink in the pen anyway, let's give the nib a try and see how it writes. So this is a 1948 Parker 51 Vacumatic, and I'd say this is a medium 14 karat gold nib. It's not that wet, but these pens never are. I might try to widen that slit a little bit to get it to be a little bit wetter, but it's very smooth and a fast writer. So we'll take it apart again. Well, that took a lot of doing, a lot of heat. I'm really surprised to get that Vac Pump out of there. I heated it with the collet on it to keep that celluloid rod there from melting. But boy, I got this so hot I thought this plastic was going to melt. That's a high temperature. And with all the residue that's on there, there's some kind of glue that was on there. It was more than shellac. I don't know who restored this last, but they really wanted to glue that on there. And that's not necessary. You don't need to glue this Vacumatic pump to the barrel. No, no, wrong, wrong.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong.
So let's try to get the rest of that out of there. Use one of my rods for my knockout block and tap that out. There we go. And there's that sack that was in there. It looked like it was okay. You know, it's a little bit stiff. So this might be a little bit old. I don't think it's original because the way that Vacumatic pump was glued onto that section. I'm just going to pull that out and the pellet will remain, and we'll Dremel that pellet out of there. Yeah, now I'm convinced this was a previous repair because that pellet receptacle right there has been glued on wonky like that. So this is a newer receptacle that's been glued onto the end of that rod at an angle. And it might mean why it's not going straight or not going back in, because it's at that weird angle. So it might affect it. So I'm not going to chance it. I'm going to take that off of there and put another one on since I have a replacement. So the thing is to get that off there without breaking the rod underneath. And I think he probably crazy glued it on there too. So I'm going to have to chip away at it. So I've actually replaced the entire Vac pump with one I've got because that pump is so wonky that it's going to take me some time to fix it properly. So now I've attached the sack by pushing it with my pellet pusher in, and I'm using the handy dandy guide that Scott put on this tool just to push my X-Acto blade around that little groove, and it's the exact right size. So now we add a little bit of talc to our diaphragm to allow it to slide back on itself. Put it back on the tool, then roll it back like a cuff. Sometimes they don't like to cooperate. Sometimes they do. Sometimes I have to go off camera for 2 or 3 minutes to get this all the way. And sometimes they cooperate. Why won't you cooperate? And there we go. Finally, after a lot of cajoling, and that should work properly, just like that. Yeah, I think the problem with the other one too was it was cut too short, and that was rolled back on itself. It was really very small. You can see the length that this is. This is a debutante size diaphragm for this pen. All Parker 51 Vacumatics have debutante size diaphragms. I think this was a deb size diaphragm, but I think it was cut way too short. Let's measure it and find out. Yeah, it was cut that much too short. So again, it's not going to pump up very much ink if it only travels a certain distance. So now I'm going to put a little bit of silicone oil on the end of that cuff, just around the end, just allow it to slide inside the barrel without twisting. And then we're going to add a little bit to those threads as well. This is just a lubricant here, not an ink seal. Those threads inside this barrel, when they're tight, and that diaphragm is tight up against that little ramp right there, the whole thing ends up being a complete seal. So let's twist it back and forth and get some threads started. And I'm going to pull it out again. Jesus, something going on over my head. Just going to get a dental tool and make sure I've got those threads nice and clear. My eye is on for this. Yep, someone's used CA glue on these threads. Just enough. Block those threads. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's CA glue, cyanoacrylate, crazy glue residue on those threads. Crazy glue residue. Yeah, I'm going to have to work these threads a little bit. Do it with the collet. Just working it back and forth. There, that's tight. Take it back out again. Yeah, I'm still getting some debris on there. Look at that. That's all residue from that crazy glue. That's sliding a lot better now. And that silicone oil on that diaphragm in there keeps it from twisting inside the barrel as well. There, I'll make it nice and tight. Yep, that's good. So here I thought this pen wasn't going to need any restoration, just polishing. But it looks like the previous restoration was not done properly. That's working very, very nicely now. That's the feel. And you can almost tell when it's correct because it has a certain amount of drag, especially when you're filling the pen. You get a certain amount of suction to it, and it feels right. When I was filling it before, it just didn't feel right. I was getting bubbles, but the bubbles wouldn't stop, and usually get some suction and draw. So now let's put the feed, the collector feed, and the nib back in the barrel. There we go. And polish up that nib in case I'm not opening it up again. Get it nice and shiny. Find my section. There it is. This still has ink in it, but that's okay. I'm actually probably going to take this off again just to polish out that old ink from there. But at this point, I just want to test to make sure it works. Oh, I need the clutch ring, don't you? Need the clutch ring. Put the goddamn sleeve on first, Doug. PT, GD, SOF. There's the point there. And I need to line up with my thumb. Put it on, and it's perfect. I'm getting good at that. Okay, now, get my regular glasses on. Get some ink. We'll try this again. Bubbles. Draw. Okay, that's what I like to see. Bubbles. Draw. I can actually see the ink level of the bottle going up and down as it draws. I'm going to pump it until I have no more bubbles. We remember the pen weighed with the blind cap on. The pen weighed 10 grams. So let's measure it now. That's more like it. So that's 2.2 milliliters of ink. I was getting 0.3 before. 2.2. That's a lot of ink. And that's exactly what you should be getting from a good Vacumatic, because you're using most of that barrel for ink. So at this point, if this were a demonstrator, you'd see that that diaphragm would come to about there, and the rest of this is ink. So 2.2 milliliters of ink. Go again. 1948. Parker 51 Vacumatic, and it has 2.2 milliliters of ink. Yay! I'm going to want to make it a little bit wetter, so I'm going to work on that nib with a shim to see whether I can widen it out a touch, and we'll come back and polish up this pen. So now we got the fountain pen working. I haven't polished up the barrel yet. I'll do that last. But let's look at the pencil now, because it has caused me problems as well. I've polished up both caps, and so they're almost brand new. They look lovely. But if you remember, when I pulled this cap off, it took the sleeve off the mechanism as well. And that is an issue. So first of all, let's talk about this Vacumatic pencil from 1948. These were mechanical pencils that fed the lead in from the front. It would push it and pull it and actually expel it as well as you turned this cap. The year after this pen and pencil set was made, Parker redesigned the Vacumatic into the Aerometric. Now this is a set from 1954. This is an Aerometric Parker 51 right here. And this is the Jotter fountain pen from 1954, which used the click that it still uses today. And here is the Aerometric pencil. And this pencil used a different clutch mechanism. By pushing on the cap, it moved a clutch which expelled the lead. And then you press the clutch and push the lead back in again. Very similar to modern mechanical pencils. The Vacumatic doesn't work like that, and many people can't figure out how they work, and so they do some funky things to them. So let's pull this cap off and you'll see what I mean. It pulled that sleeve right off of there. This sleeve fits onto the brass mechanism down at the nose and helps turn the mechanism to expel and retract lead. So in order to fix this, it's supposed to come off like that, and then you get the eraser at the end. And this is just a hollow tube right here. So in order to get at this mechanism, you have to remove the nose cone. And what I did was I put an elastic band around it and applied light pressure with some pliers, and then twisted the barrel to release that thread. And then the nose cone comes off, and there's the brass-lined barrel. And here is the mechanism. The way this mechanism works is there's an outer helix cut tube of brass. Inside of that, there's a tube which takes the lead, and inside that, there's a small key that pushes a rod to expel the lead. So if I hold on to the nose of this mechanism and turn it, at the very end of the travel, you'll see that that tube where the leads go in is extended, and then you keep turning and that rod is extended and pushes the lead out. So when you put the lead into the pencil from the front, you put it in the tube and then give it a push, and that lead will slide like that and be caught by that inner keyed rod. The two keys, there's one right there, travel along that helical keyway. There's the second rod that expels the lead when you're done with it, and the helical keyway draws those keys all the way to the back of the lead chamber. All of this rotation happens because this sleeve is press fit right there, like that, and you rotate it and it works. The problem with this pencil is that someone has jammed so many leads down inside there, it expanded this and it broke off a bunch of lead in there, and they tried to crank it and it sort of crunched and expanded that metal, and you might not be able to see, it's very, very small. See if I can find it. There it is. There's a crack right there, and as you press fit this, that crack expands. So the mechanism will still work, but the sleeve keeps pulling off every time you pull the cap off. So the pencil works, but we want to seal that to make sure that this doesn't expand anymore and will still turn the mechanism. So I had a discussion with my daughter, who works with this kind of material, brass and stainless steel and stuff like that, fixing musical instruments every day. And she suggested a couple of things. I had suggested myself that I use Loctite on it, either red or blue. So I've ordered some Loctite, and I'm going to try putting Loctite blue, the temporary stuff, right there on those threads, and then let it dry and see whether that will hold it from being pulled out of the pencil. If it gets pulled out at all, then I'll try again with some Loctite red, which is permanent. But before I do that, I'm going to lubricate this with some graphite. I want to put oil in there because the leads are open in this space. So I don't want to get oil on your leads. It'll gum up the works. But this is brass on brass, and this is one of the problems with this design, is that wears out after a while. These little keys on these two rods will get worn down over the years, the more you use the pencil. So I'm waiting for my Loctite to come. My daughter's other suggestion was to fashion a brass ring that would fit right around that part of this and hold like a bandage, hold that break together when you put it on. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, because fashioning a piece of brass, she said she'll take a look and see what she might have in her shop. But I'm going to put this back together again. We put the mechanism down inside the barrel and screw the nose cone back on again. This is only for storage of these leads, maybe a couple of leads, not for adding leads to the mechanism. That's the later design. We put the cap back on. There we go. And we turn the cap and the lead comes out. We turn it the other way and it retracts. And when we're done and we need a new lead, we turn it all the way. The little piece of lead will be expelled there from that little sleeve. You turn the gear all the way back, take the new lead, put it down inside, get it so it pushes out just a little bit like that. You turn it down and give it a small push, and it goes back in just that amount just fit it so that it will retract back and forth. These leads are ones. I've put the Faber-Castell Super Polymer in here. It's a really nice lead, and they're 0.9 millimeters in thickness. So that's a special thick lead. Don't put these more prevalent 0.5 leads in this pencil. So while I wait for my materials to see whether I can fix that sleeve, let's polish up this barrel and that section and see how new we can get this Vacumatic set looking. So I polished up the section and the barrel. I identified some nicks on it and went at those nicks in an isolated way with my 400 grit flexible sandpaper. And then I went through my micro mesh one at a time from 1500 through 12,000. Then I rubbed it down with Anderson Pen's Microgloss number 5, the compound, that's a rubbing compound. And then with Anderson Pen's Microgloss number 1, that's a polish. And once I've got it all back together again, I'm going to add some what people in the States call Renaissance wax. We have it here in Lee Valley's as conservator's wax, just to give that gold a little bit of a coating so it doesn't oxidize quite so much and polish everything up. Apparently you shouldn't be using this on celluloid. So let's put the pen back together again. Put the clutch ring on, put the collector and nib assembly in. This might be the last time I see this nib, so I'm going to give it a bit of a buff with my jeweler's cloth. And we put the hood back on. Note where the point of the hood is with my thumb. Turn that nib around to where I think it belongs. And I turned it too far. Third time's the charm. Third time's the charm. There we go. Give the whole thing a nice polish. And there we have it, fully restored. Beautiful. 1948 Parker 51 Vacumatic in dove gray and gold cap. So I got my supplies finally. And this is the thread locker blue, medium strength, thread locker red, high strength. These are just different brands than, what's it called, Loctite. But it's the same stuff. So I'm going to try the blue first because this is removable. If it holds, great. If it doesn't hold, then I'll try the red. But before I seal this sleeve to the mechanism, I want to make sure that there's some good lubrication in there. So I got a little tube of extra fine graphite lubricant. I don't want an oil in there at all. And I'm just going to dust a little bit. Woo, it's falling right out. Dust a little bit of that graphite along that shaft. Try to get it into those helical grooves, especially around those keys where all the wear is. Gonna roll it a little bit. This fine graphite powder is great for sticky locks and things like that. And I'm just going to roll it back and forth to get that graphite into those grooves. Take that away and then shake up our Loctite. Just going to put a small drop of Loctite right there and then introduce the sleeve to it. So I just wicked off a little bit. There. Just going to wipe off the excess and make sure it turns. So I'm going to let that dry because the directions say assemble the parts and that's it. But I know that you have to let that dry. So I'm going to let that dry for an hour or so. And then I'll come back and put it back into the pencil. Well, I successfully repaired both the fountain pen and the pencil. They were way more complicated than I had thought going in. Every time I see a pen that looks like it will be a piece of cake, I get an alarm bell at the back of my head that says, this one's going to come back and bite me in the ass. And sure enough, both of them did just that. I'm positive that whoever restored the pen did something to the pencil as well. They cut the diaphragm for the Vacumatic pump way too short, so it wouldn't suck up any ink at all. Then when they replaced the Vac Pump into the barrel, they glued it in with crazy glue.
Are they nuts? See, that's what I thought.
Now that the diaphragm has been replaced properly, the pen draws up 2.2 milliliters of ink. The nib was a bit dry to begin with, which is typical for a Parker 51, but I used a shim to make it a touch wetter, and it writes beautifully. I polished up the cap, the barrel, and the section, and it looks brand new. And I successfully repaired the pencil. I discovered why the chrome-plated brass sleeve had been pulled out of the mechanism and cracked. Someone had used an implement to dig the eraser out of the end of the tube and caused a burr in the brass right there that was catching on the inside of the cap and pulling off the sleeve. I sanded that burr down with 400 grit sandpaper, reshaped the eraser so it was round again as it had been squashed into an oval, and distorting the end of the sleeve as well. I lubricated it with a touch of silicone oil. I used Loctite glue on the brass mechanism to seal and secure the sleeve to the mechanism, and so far, so good. I pulled it out and pushed it in repeatedly, and it shows no sign of coming loose.
That's what she said.
And if it does, I will use Loctite Red instead. So, this restoration took twice as long as I had expected, but the result is one gorgeous 1948 Parker 51 Vacumatic pen and pencil set in the original box. I'm hoping that this will find a happy new home as I'm selling the set for $180 US. Let me know if you're interested by emailing me at inkquiringminds@gmail.com. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. You can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you. For watching, and that's all she wrote.